So, Berto, I thought we'd just kick back and have a fun episode in which we reviewed some of the 13 lists that we made for the 13th anniversary show. You know, we recorded 13 hours.
I can't believe we did that. Are you sure we did that?
A few weeks ago for our 13th anniversary show on YouTube. And I never post those episodes, or sometimes I do, but and people will be like, oh, I missed it, you know, and I want to enjoy it. And I'm always like, one, I kind of feel like I want it to be a real live event where you kind of had to be there. It's a special, you know, we record everything else. So there's that. And two, so often with those 13-hour or those marathon episodes that we do, they crumble pretty quickly and deteriorate, and I don't want that out there. So I thought to make it up to the listeners, we would go back with fresh minds and not weighed down by 12 hours of talking, and actually review some of those top 13 lists that we developed. What do you say, Berto?
I think that sounds like a great plan.
This is the Psychology in Seattle podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Kirk Honda. I'm a therapist, and I'm also a professor.
My name is Humberto Castañeda, and I sell timers, essentially stopwatches, for live streamers who go over 12 hours in a live stream.
So did you know that YouTube says the max live show you can, or YouTube live stream you can do is 12 hours? Did you know that they say that?
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So there was a chance that our final hour
gonna not be
right. But what they mean is they'll only DVR 12 hours. So
if you wanted to keep it up, the last hour would have been...
Well, no, the first hour would get like snipped off.
I see.
You know what I mean? It only DVRs the most recent 12 hours.
I think you had a good idea, because I do think that the one problem with, because I agree with you mostly, it's just that the one problem is that we have people on such different time zones.
Yeah. I
like this idea, this concept that we should explore, maybe, of doing like 2 shows for different time zones.
So after the 13th, Berto and I are, you know, we're getting old.
We're getting up there in the ages.
So we're like the 11 hour, I felt like we killed it.
Yeah.
We were fine. 12 hour, surprisingly, fine.
Yeah.
This past year, I feel like both of us have somehow aged.
13 was so hard compared to 12.
Yeah. I mean, halfway through my brain wasn't working anymore. And so I had this idea of like, well, 14, we could break it up into 2 7-hour chunks and do it at different time, you know, like 1 in the morning, one like a Saturday morning and then a Sunday night. That way, depending on where you are on the planet, you'd be able to join in. And,
by the way,
and 7 hours is still pretty marathon.
Well, that's a marathon. Yeah. But by the way, I went back because I wanted to hear the songs I did last year in the thing.
Yeah.
I didn't realize. Do you know that I wrote those songs a week before the podcast?
I forgot that.
And now they were shorter. They were all like 30, 35 seconds. Uh-huh. And I played them live. So in a way it worked in my advantage because I couldn't have memorized them and kept them memorized for like 6 months without practicing them all the time. But I was like, what? That was crunch mode.
How did you get access to that recording?
I have the practices. I don't have the podcast.
Oh.
I have my recordings on my phone as I was writing them. So I have like take 1, take 2. But they start on August 1st.
Yeah, but you were terrifying me because I'm like, wait, it's on YouTube? Anyway.
Yeah.
So let's do top 13 movies that made me cry. Mm-hmm. Berto, give your 13, starting with number 13.
Okay, number 13, my ironic pick of Indiana Jones. I can't even say it. And the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Indiana Jones 4. I just mean, this movie made me cry inside because it kind of killed the little child in me. I hated this movie. I love Indiana Jones.
So when you saw this, were you rolling your eyes the whole time?
Well, when it first started, I was like super excited. I'm like, I can't believe it.
Yeah.
But pretty soon into it, the problem started.
I didn't super roll my eyes until it was over. And
really?
Because once it was, especially when the crystal skulls were spinning and the mountain and the whole thing, I was kind of like, I don't really even understand what's happening. And then when the credits started roll, I was like, wait, what?
I wouldn't call it rolling my eyes, but I started getting worried early on because early in the movie, Indy Harrison, he was acting a little old. And look, by the way, he did great in the Star Wars movies.
Yeah.
So I don't know what happened, the direction or something.
Well, I think he went through a period where he decided he was going to act in the most subtle of ways.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah, you know how like Al Pacino became less subtle?
Yes.
And like you couldn't make him do a subtle.
You wanted to.
But Harrison Ford went the other direction.
Right, and so like I started, and then they did the nuke where he hides in the fridge, and I was like, okay. But then I got a little bit of hope when Shia LaBeouf shows up, because I'm like, okay, I like this. I like where this is going. But then it started devolving again. And then by the time Marion shows up, she was so great in the original. She was terrible in this movie.
Yeah, the bugs and the jungle and the cars.
And then but when he's swinging from the vines, when Shia's swinging from the vines, it was over. Let alone when I realized we were dealing with aliens. I'm like, Indiana Jones does not deal with aliens. I'm sorry.
Right.
All right.
Yeah.
Anyways, number 12, for real now. Up. The movie Up. The whole first sequence with the couple aging together, and spoiler alert, the wife passing away. Oh my gosh, that was so impactful. I was in tears.
We didn't do this during the live show, but let's rate the actual tears that you had while you watched it, okay? Or during a viewing, because it could have been like the third time. Sometimes when I watch things a third time, I cry even more.
Yeah.
But so let's do a scale. So from 1 is like you feel the tears in your eyes,
some moisture,
but they don't fall.
Right.
2 is tears are now tear 1 or 2 are definitely like, you know, dripping down your cheek. 3 is snot and tears coming down your face.
Sure.
4 is you're convulsing, you know. Okay, so on a scale from 1 to 4.
Oh, 1 to 4. I thought we were going to 10. Okay, great. Okay, scale of 1 to 4. Up for me was in the moment at the beginning of the movie, it was about a 2. I would give the whole movie about a 1 because the rest of the movie wasn't a tearjerker.
Yeah.
Okay. 11. Batman versus Superman. Unorthodox. I get it. You can send me hate mail. But I gotta be honest, when Superman died and the whole funeral thing, I was in tears.
Scale from 1 to 4.
There was a 2 as well.
Yeah, when Superman sacrifices himself, to me, that is the quintessential superhero behavior. The, you know, fighting the evil, maybe even dying yourself, like that. Like when Tony Stark takes the nuclear missiles into the portal.
Right.
That kind of stuff gets me. So I was definitely a 2 when
But
Superman...
again, that's the moment I was crying. The movie as a whole, 1 at most, not even maybe, because it wasn't a tearjerker movie.
Well, yeah, don't rate the movie, just that moment.
But I have to, because the top ones are going to be like, you'll see. Like, okay. But anyways, Les Mis... this one had me in tears. Also a 2. It's mainly the song she sings. Fontaine, she sings this famous song, and it just it was Anne Hathaway in the movie, and in the musical, it's whoever sings, and I forget the name of the actress I was seeing, but super touching and very, very poignant moment. If you've ever listened to the lyrics, you know, I had a dream about what life could be, but life has killed that dream I dream. And it's so relatable for as you age and you have moments of like, wow, what just happened to my life? And it's just, getting a little weepy right now. All right, number 9, The Sound of Music. Now this one, it grew as a tearjerker for me. As a kid, I just loved the music. But when I watched it as an adult, and especially as I've gotten older, the numbers have climbed. So I think it's inched up to a 3 at some points, because it gets to that moment where...
Which moment?
It's when they're trying to figure out how they're going to escape, and they don't have an out because they were trying to leave in the middle of the night, and they've been found. And I'm like... I'm feeling that, like, the thought of, like, you have this family you're responsible for. You're trying to flee in the middle of the night.
That's when you cry?
The Nazis. That's where it starts. And then it continues, and then it escalates till the performance, and then when the nuns helped him escape. But I think actually no. The worst part is when Liesel, where I forget the name of the boy who loves Liesel, the Nazi boy.
The Nazi boy.
Where he when he doesn't whistle. When he doesn't whistle, and he's about to let them go, and then unfortunately the captain pushes it a little far, and says, "I knew you didn't have it in you," and then he whistles. Oh my gosh, I'm just so emotional during that whole thing. So I think the whole thing for me is like a 3 there. Okay, 8. It's a Wonderful Life. This is another 3 for me. I have a lot of moments in this movie where it's just like tears, and then there's a moment where it's definitely a 3, and that is the when
he's home, when he finally arrives,
when everyone starts showing up to help him.
Yeah.
Oh, I lose it. Of course, that's the point. It's engineered perfectly.
Yeah.
Oh God, it's so touching.
He's holding like his daughter.
Susu's pedals. He's got a daughter. It's everything.
Yeah.
Okay, number 7, The Pursuit of Happiness.
So no sobbing? Do you have no heart?
I have a heart, but I'm trying to build up to it.
Okay.
Number 7, The Pursuit of Happiness with Will Smith.
Which I have not seen, which is so strange.
This is a movie where this one touched deep because I had a dad that was a single dad in New York trying to deal with me, and so I just like it like feels personal. And so when he's trying to make it and a lot of things are going wrong for him, and he's just trying to be a good dad, and he's trying to make it, like, I broke down and cried. I think this one may only been a 2, but the feeling of the movie overall makes me feel like a 3. Okay. Number 6, Boyhood. Another one where, like, it's a long movie, so I certainly didn't cry from beginning to end, but there were many moments in this movie where I just felt a connection to the story, like, where I could relate, having been a boy, having grown up, I could relate to the moments, and I could relate so well to the pain, to the insecurity, to all the things, and I cried. I probably had multiple 2s and multiple 3s throughout the movie. 5, Toy Story 3. Probably my first 4 in the bunch.
Okay. Yeah.
This one had a couple 2s early on, but when they get to that moment where you're transferring the toy ownership, oh God, that was a full-on 4. Yeah. Category 4.
Yeah, God.
Oh God.
And every time I see that scene, it's a 4.
Yes.
Yeah. But what are the other? So obviously, when they're about to die, that's a 3.
Oh, I cried early on because those movies do such a good job. Immediately, I remember at the first part of the story, I remember that, like, they're showing how Andy is no longer right, and so I'm already like, and then when they show the story of how the toy was left at the park, the little girl left the bear.
Oh right.
Oh, I'm like, oh God. But anyways, okay.
The bear who becomes evil.
Yes, exactly. Okay, number 4, Rogue One. Okay, so this is a weird one because for the majority of the movie, I'm not in tears. I'm just really enjoying the movie. But my reaction was so visceral, so intense, so uncontrollable when Darth Vader shows up until the end, when the credits start, that it had to be number 4 because basically I went from like, oh, I love this movie, this is so exciting, to I'm a child and I am uncontrollably crying for everything that's good and holy, and I'm cheering and crying Darth. Why am I cheering Darth Vader? I don't know. I'm just like, oh my God, the realization of the power, because that was part of it. As kids, we knew he was so powerful, and they did actually a really good job, probably because of the limitations of the tech, but they did a good job of making it feel powerful. But we never got to see like a full display of all the things that he could do.
Well, and it hadn't been worked out yet.
But
we saw so many subsequent Jedi abilities that were like, well,
he's really powerful.
Yeah.
Now, I actually, to be fair...
it was perfectly choreographed because unlike Jumping Bean Yoda, it fit with what his age and with the canon of that age, because he a day later is with Obi-Wan Kenobi fighting, and he's real stiff, but so he was kind of stiff in that scene in Rogue One, but he still had all of his abilities, and it looked like it would have fit.
And to see, because he's not fighting a Jedi.
Yeah.
To see how he can cut through normal humans.
Yeah. Without having to break a sweat. Yeah.
And that was what I wanted Yoda to be, right? Yoda was the 37th chamber.
Of course. Yoda would have been, it was even more decrepit.
Exactly.
He had a cane, for God's sakes. Yeah.
So anyways, that made me...
Well, so I'm going to talk about Rogue One since we're on the top. So this is my number 6.
Yeah.
I start crying. I cry the whole second half. I've rewatched this movie, and I at some point, I think identified Rogue One as like my favorite Star Wars movie.
I remember you saying that. Yeah.
And I cry when K2SO he sacrifices himself. That's probably like a 3. I cry when what's her face and what's his face are hugging
when they know it
as the blast is coming. Yeah. I cry when I am the one with the Force and the Force is with me. I am with the Force and the Force is with me.
Oh gosh.
And he sacrificed, and then his friend is like, no, and I cry when there's just so many moments in that, because there's like I cry when what's his name from Sound of Metal?
Right.
He sacrifices. He's like, the signal is up, and then one of the stormtroopers throws in a grenade, and he died. Like I cry during that part. Like it's just so.
I think you're right. I had multiple, certainly ones, probably 2s throughout the movie. But the thing is, it felt more normal. Like this is a movie with good moments, with very sacrifices and things. I wasn't expecting the visceral breakdown at the end. Like that was weird.
And when the X-Wings, because during the Battle of Yavin, you had like Red Leader, but you didn't have the Blue Wing, and the Blue Wing was the group that got through and ended up dying in the end. And so. Just seeing the X-Wings flying around that Seraph base and blowing crap up, and the troops on the ground, and it's like a D-Day movie for
and
Star Wars.
As a Star Wars fan, the stakes of what they're fighting for. So it's
and then you see the Death Star on the horizon. Yeah,
so good.
Now, non-Star Wars fans are listening to us and going, "You nerds." All right, what's your next one?
Number 3, Inside Out.
Yeah, that's my number 2.
Okay, so Inside Out. Basically, I'll keep it short because I'll let you go too. But this is a movie I didn't expect. I knew it was Pixar. I like Pixar movies. I knew I was going to like it probably, but I didn't expect almost anything from it. The previews were like, okay, this is like that show that came out in the 90s and Herman's Head. But I'm sure it's going to be funny. I thought it was going to be funny. That was the point. Yeah. It's going to be a funny movie because what wacky characters are in our heads. But dude, from the very get-go, when the baby is born, I'm already crying at the beginning. I'm already crying at the beginning when she's like, and she's born and I'm in her head and I'm like, I'm already crying. And then I see like the problem developing with like the little character's sadness, and I'm like, oh God, no. And then as the memories, and I'm like, I know what's going to happen to the memory. No. And then bing bong, that whole movie was just a roller coaster for me. It was like probably 3s and 4s the whole movie. You know?
Me too. Right. And the killer is the one at the end. When she starts to cry. I'm right now. You're verklempt.
I am. Oh God, I feel it in my fingers. I feel it in my toes. The moment when the main Joy realizes the flip side to that story, the hockey story.
Yeah.
Oh God, I lose it.
Yeah.
I lose it. Oh.
Yeah. I cry throughout this movie. Bing Bong, that's a 4. And it's such a good movie, and it's so deep, and like
Nothing's cheap in it. Like, there's no cheap cries in this.
If there's a movie that I would wish that everyone on the planet should watch, including children, it would be this movie. Like, it's not only funny and entertaining, but it's so poignant. I mean, there's nothing like it. I don't know a single movie. Maybe Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind has a similar deep philosophical conundrum that it explores and you feel, but this movie, it hits you like a ton of bricks and you just feel so bad. The genius of it is that it's such a mundane story.
Yeah.
A girl and her parents move from Minnesota to California.
And she's a little
and she's having trouble adjusting. Yeah. That's it.
Who doesn't?
Yeah. And she feels a little ignored.
And the whole thing takes place over what? Like a couple days?
Couple days, yeah. Yeah. All right, what's your number one?
Number two. Number two is Moana.
Yeah.
Make way, make way. So, okay, Moana caught me off guard for sure. I went to watch it in the theater, and I didn't know what I was getting into. I thought it was, again, all these movies are not surprising that I would like them.
Well, when you hear of a new Disney movie, it's kind of a roll of the dice. You're probably going to like it.
Yeah.
But you don't think you're going to think it's one of the best movies of all time.
No. And I had preconceived notions from the trailers.
This is why you never watch trailers, bro.
I don't watch trailers generally, but I'm saying even just like the little scenes or whatever. I didn't have an interest in seeing this movie, really. I was like, yeah, I'll see it. Of course, it's a Disney movie. I'll see it. Okay, then the movie starts. And when the movie opens, it's not immediately obvious to me why it's going to impact me so much because I can't relate that much to those cultures. Like, I didn't grow up on an island. I'm not a Pacific Islander. I have friends that are, but I'm not. And so it's not like I'm immediately like transported to my childhood or something, or anything. But they do such a good job of layering the breaks. Now we've got the grandma in the mix. Okay, now I start feeling, because I got grandmas. And then we've got this push-pull of adventure, and I'm like, okay, that's interesting. But the place where it really starts grabbing me is, first of all, this is the first movie I can think of where there's a female hero who from beginning of the movie to the end of the movie is just the hero. She's the hero of the movie. She's not also someone's this, that, and the other thing. And she is a rich, cool, great character.
Yeah.
There's no excuses. Nothing is needed to excuse this.
Yeah.
She's just the hero. Okay. So that was already kind of getting me. I wasn't expecting that. And then the moment that really just blew my mind.
Were you crying in the mid and beginning of the movie?
No, not at the beginning. I definitely cried with the grandma. That's where I started. And then I started having little tears because what happened was, this was like ones and twos. The songs were so good. The songs were so good that I would like start actually crying a little bit during the songs because they were so good.
Well, the other thing, I actually just recently rewatched this movie the other day. The artistry, and the way they got her hair, and the way they got his hair, and the way they got the tattoos, and the water, and the boat, and the lava, and the wind, and the stars, and the sand. Like, it feels, it's obviously a cartoon. It's not like supposed to be photorealistic, but you can just feel it viscerally, this movie.
Absolutely. So then when do I start with the threes? The threes start when she sees her grandma. Her grandma swims, and then she sees her grandma. She talks to her grandma and stuff. I'm crying. I'm like, oh my God, it's my grandma. It's like,
you're relating to your grandma?
Oh yeah. And just
like what? Aspect. How are you relating?
I'm relating to my dead grandma, and I'm relating to my alive grandma, because my grandma who's dead is my mom. She's the one who raised me. And I'm relating to my alive grandma because she's a rebel and she is rebellious. She reminds me a lot of the grandma in the movie. Not in the appearance necessarily. The appearance actually reminds me of my other grandma, but in her attitude about life and how lively she was to the very end. Like, that's my Liti. So I'm like sitting there, oh God. But then when the climax, spoiler alert, the climax where Moana starts putting together that the monster is the island, I start having one of those full-on 4 or 5 convulsive fits.
Right, because the way that it is depicted, you have this, I don't know about you, I had this deep, because you and I, Berto, are harming the planet every day.
Yes.
And it is, and it's striking back at us.
Yes.
And it's personal, this movie.
And normally I can put one and one together in movies. I'm really good at, you and I've talked about this. A lot of
You're
times.
very good at like predicting. Like, oh no, the butler did it.
I had no idea what was happening. I just thought, I was already fully into this movie, but I figured, well, it's a mythology, right? So there's an evil god and there's a thing. But when I start putting it together along with Moana, I'm like, wait. Of course. Oh my God, of course. And then the music and the seas part.
And then at the end, she puts her forehead on the
forehead. And she says, the lyrics are, this is not who you are. You know who you are. And they touch. I was afraid because the movie gets quiet. I was afraid I was going to get kicked out because I couldn't control myself.
I don't remember that.
I was crying. I mean, I was trying to not be loud, but I was like, and just like full breakdown. And then the like lasted till the end. I don't know. It was.
Yeah. And by the way, like this list of top 13 is like a combination of how much we cry and also like how much we like the movie. You know, for Berto and I, if we just listed every movie we cried in, it would be like 1,000 movies. Right. So I will say I definitely cried during Moana and probably every Disney movie, but it's not in my top 13.
Right.
I just want to make that clear.
My number one, I Am Sam, which is a movie you
have not seen.
Yeah. So this movie for me was too many things, the confluence of too many things that would make me cry. First of all, it's Beatles music. And put in a way where it's like Mr. Holland's Opus times 3 or something. Number two, it's a single parent that relates to my childhood. But then you stack on top of it is a single parent with severe limitations to their parenting. In this case, because he is mentally what's the right way to say it?
Developmentally disabled.
Developmentally disabled. My dad wasn't, but he had other very big challenges. And so I'm like, oh my gosh. And then the story is so good, so strong. And there are moments in that story that you don't know how it's possible that someone could get through those moments. I cried 4-level crying for probably half this movie. So impactful.
Yeah.
So much so that I haven't been able to watch it again because I'm afraid. It's such an emotional movie.
All right. Well, that's beautiful. Let's take a break. Get back. We'll do my top 13. What do you say, Berto?
Let's do it.
All right. We're back from the break. Let's do some OPP. Some old patron praise. These patrons became patrons in August of 2018 and have remained patrons ever since then. Three years they've been patrons.
3 patron years. And a patron year is like 10 years in human years.
That's right. So Lucia has been a patron. We don't know where Lucia is from. We have Nathan from Longview, Washington.
Woo!
Beautiful Longview there.
Longview.
Did you know there is a nuclear power plant down there?
Wait, that's not Hanford or whatever?
Oh, wait, Longview. No, is it Longview? Yeah, Longview. And Kalama? Anyway, Kristen from California. We got Jenny from Massachusetts.
Woo! I lived in Massachusetts. Is she from Worcester? We
have Liz from Vermont.
Yay.
We have W from God knows where. We have Aileen from Hackensack, New Jersey.
Come on, Aileen.
Hackensack is a fun town. We got Lauren from Sherman Oaks, California.
Nice.
We got Claudia from Helsinki, Finland.
Whoa.
We have Leif from God knows where. We have Jen from Las Vegas.
Oh.
Vegas, baby. We got Nicole from Youngsville, New York.
Nice.
We got Diana from San Antonio, Texas. We got Holly from Montreal, Quebec.
Nice.
And we have upper tier patron Mimi from Newalla, Oklahoma. Thank you all for being patrons and being patrons for so long.
Speaking of Oklahoma, I just watched this series called Schmigadoon. Have you seen this?
No.
I don't know if you like it. You don't like musicals so much? Or you don't do musicals as much?
I mean, I'll watch them, but they don't really.
I would watch the first episode. If it doesn't catch you, don't watch the rest. But it's a show with Keegan
Michael Key.
And I forget the actress's name, but she's like SNL alum, I think. Anyways, they're trapped in a town where it's an eternal musical. And they kind of like reference a lot of the musicals, and they're always breaking into songs.
Yeah, probably not going to like it.
Okay. But I had a lot of fun watching it.
I can appreciate it.
You actually would feel like he felt, because he was like, why are they singing songs?
Okay, so my top 13, my number 13 is Coco.
Yes.
Which
honorable mention.
Is definitely a 4. I mean, when he sings the third version of Remember Me to her at the end, I'm a 4.
Yeah.
I'm probably also crying when the climax is happening when they're in the land of the dead, and there's a couple other.
Dude, I was crying when he goes visits that dude with the guitar.
Yeah, and
I was crying there. Like,
right.
I mean, I don't know why Coco. Why did I put Indiana Jones 4 as a lark and not Coco? It's a crime against nature. Coco should have been number 13 for me.
Yeah.
Or better.
Number 12, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. So not only is this my, one of my top 3 movies, but and so poignant and so, I recently rewatched it and thought, I'm probably not going to like it. I know where it goes.
Yeah.
But it moves so fast.
Yeah.
And each scene, I remember the point the movie was making, but I forgot how
details,
how funny
the
it is.
structure, yeah.
But also just how funny. Like there's these scenes where Jim Carrey's character is a kid and he goes back in time and he's a little boy and he's like, they're making me hit the bird with this hammer, and she's like, you don't have to do it if you don't want to, and they're just having this she's like, do you like my hat? Like, I don't know. There's just these really
very Rushmore or almost Wes Anderson in moments.
Yeah. And it's similar to like with you with Boyhood. There are parts of this movie that touch me in ways that I've never been touched, like ideas or memory. That's what I love about Wes Anderson as well, that they'll put together a scene and I'm like,
I can relate to so many aspects.
It's sort of like this, reference in Ratatouille where the food critic is given the ratatouille, and there are certain storylines or emotions or experiences that will transport me back to when I was 7 in a way that I've never done before. And Eternal Sunshine does that in like 1,000 ways.
It's funny. Eternal Sunshine, a movie I love, absolutely. But it's interesting that I didn't, at least I don't remember having, for me, it was more of like just being so engrossed on like the details of the sci-fi aspects of it. And just the conceptual aspects of it.
Which are interesting in and of itself as well. Yeah. But the parts that make me cry are towards the end when they're, spoiler alert, deciding to be in a relationship again with each other. Even though they know very viscerally, because they're listening to these audio cassette tapes of themselves talking eternal crap about each other. But they've forgotten. And they're like, well, let's do it again. And like, that's probably like a 3 for me. Number 11, Schindler's List. The main scene that gets me a 4 is when Liam Neeson's character is like, I could have sold this car and gotten 10. I could have sold this watch and gotten 3. And he's breaking down and he's on the ground. He's like, I could have saved more people. And then there's so many aspects to that make me sob. One is to watch someone who's already sacrificed, because you get this sense of he's been holding on for years now, putting on the face of a loyal Nazi and not able to be himself. And then when he's finally at the finish line, he can kind of break down and cry about it. And he feels guilty. And so you feel bad for him. But then also the fear of, or the sadness, deep sadness of the what's his face, the character, the Jewish character, the main, the clerk, played by what's his face that played Gandhi. Anyway, he comes to the Liam Neeson character and says, "It's okay. You did so much. Look at all the people that you said."
Right.
And then so that grace that he gives him makes me cry. But then this other layer of like all the millions who died who he couldn't save, and how unjust and meaningless it was. Like not meaningless, but how pointless it was. How so it's layer upon layer of sadness. Right?
I cried a lot, I'm sure. I have very little memory of how I physically was, but all I know for a fact is I was in shock for a lot of that movie, that whole second half. And partially, I don't know about you, like I knew so little about what happened in the Holocaust.
Of course, we knew what happened on a broad stroke, but this depicted it in, viscerally, and, you saw, that's what it was like,
It was like part of it is in Colombia, I didn't grow up learning about the Holocaust at all, like zero. And until I was 15, most of the history I knew about was about how, the conquistadors and the thing and all the things in Latin America and all those things. Very little about U.S. history. And yes, I knew about World War II somewhat. I think bad things happened. I knew the Nazis were bad.
Well, it makes sense. Colombia wouldn't be that interested in teaching the history of World War II.
And I'd watched movies where Nazis were bad, like The Sound of Music.
Yeah.
But I didn't know about the Holocaust. I mean, I knew, but I didn't know.
Right. Yeah, that movie is still brutal. Number 10, Dead Poet Society.
Yes.
I saw this when I was 17 or 18, and it was directly geared towards my brain. The Carpe Diem, the brotherhood, the following a mentor, the breaking free, the self-expression, the depression and sadness and suicide was all like a lightning rod to my soul when I was 18. And I remember I wrote songs about this movie.
Oh, wow.
I thought about this movie. I would doodle little sayings from this movie, like the sort of party guy who was kind of a slut boy or something. Like there were certain things that he said that I remember just being like, oh my God, that's like
you wanted to be in the Dead Poets Society.
Yeah. And I did. So, I mean, have I ever told you I started my own like fraternity?
You told me that. Yeah. You didn't mention the connection to this movie, but you told me about that.
Well, I watched the movie after I started, but
you had a relationship in that sense. Like I have a team of people too.
Right. And we had a name for ourselves and we had secret meetings, and
so you could relate to that.
Yeah. I didn't know what I was, years later, I realized that what I had created basically out of thin air was something that people have been creating for hundreds of years, these little, like with J.R.R. Tolkien and his buddies, they created this group where they, wrote stories and had this little club, and it's something that, the Dead Poet Society, and then the guys, anyway.
By the way, I always wanted that when I was a kid. In 4th and 5th grade, we had a teeny little, 4 of us were in a secret club. But it was very, it's 4th and 5th grade. So, and then after that, I always wanted, because my dad used to tell me how when he was a teenager, they had a club, and it was they had a room in the house, and I knew which room it was, and they had a club, and they had club meetings, and they would do all these things. I always wanted that, and I never had it. I never knew how to start one. No one invited me to one.
Well, I just started one. I just made a list of 30 guys that I liked in my school that I'd grown up with, and I invited, 15 or 10, and 4 or 5 showed up to the first initiation, and I initiated all of them, and then we initiated a couple more, and then at its max, I think it was like 9 guys, and so cool. And we're still friends, you know. Anyway, so yeah, the parts that I cry are when they stand up on the desks. That's a big tear-jerking moment. But there are others, and that's definitely a 3.5. Number 9 is Black Klansman, which isn't a tearjerker movie, of course, but there are a few moments. I definitely was a 2 crying when there's a couple scenes where a charismatic civil rights black leader is giving a speech, and there are all these people in the audience, and they all have, their cool duds
their
and
get-ups.
their afros and the looks on their faces and the way Spike Lee focus. I've never seen a scene like this in a movie, and it gives me chills just thinking. The charismatic leader is speaking truth to power and is inspiring them and me.
Yeah.
And then Spike Lee zooms in, face by face.
Right.
And it's
you almost expect to see yourself as one of the faces.
And it's lit perfectly.
Yeah.
It's almost like founding fathers light.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And you can see the dedication and the resolve in the audience members.
You almost expect, and this one went on to do this, and this one went on to do this. Yeah.
And the fighting the good fight.
Right.
And so I was definitely a 2 during that. But what happened to me was at the very end of the movie, Spike Lee has this series of all these things, all these flashes of real footage and things that are happening coming up to today. And it's like boom, 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 boom. And I walked out of the theater and I was just so moved. And I just sobbed and sobbed and sobbed and sobbed and sobbed.
Yeah. There's something I didn't put in the list. Some cases, because it cut too deep. But I think you might remember that after I saw, and it's a documentary, so I also didn't do any documentaries. But after I saw the Michael Jackson documentary, do you remember I told you I finished it in the car, like the final scene I was watching.
Finding Neverland.
Yeah. And I was in my car. I spent 20 minutes bawling. It was weird and powerful and scary. But I as you're describing walking out of the theater and getting a reaction, that's intense.
Yeah. And what I was crying for was the injustice. The first time I really remember having this feeling was Veterans Day or Memorial Day. I think it was Veterans Day in 97 or something. And I remember, Veterans Day, Memorial Day, unless you have someone in your family in the military, which I don't, they kind of just are a generic holiday.
Yeah.
And I had never really thought about Veterans Day or Memorial Day before that. But this one Veterans Day, I remember, I think I might have been watching the news or something, and they were talking about veterans who had died overseas or, over the decades of wars that the United States have been through. And it just hit me, the sacrifice, a 19-year-old kid who screams as he goes into battle and dies for me, ostensibly. And just thinking about them crumpled up on the beach of Normandy and just unceremoniously, floating in the shallow water, and
it's hard to be cynical
and
that kind of image.
And I remember I was sitting on my bed and I was just sobbing, just thinking about all of it. And I remember 10 minutes into crying, I'm thinking, what am I crying about? I've always known about this. Why is it hitting me right now?
Right.
And I've had a number of moments like that, after watching Black Klansman, the feeling of, it's an injustice cry.
Yeah.
It's a sadness for the injustice that other people have been through, of just why did people do that to other people, I guess.
Yep.
Number 8 is Little Match Girl. It's a short by Disney, it's originally an older story, but Disney made it into this beautiful cartoon short, and it is heart-wrenching and definitely a 4. It's about a little girl who is begging on the streets, and she similar to The Giving Tree by Shel Silverstein, like is always sacrificing and then finally sacrifices and then dies, I think, at the end. I don't know.
Oh man,
I can't remember because I was crying. So number 7 is Forrest Gump. I know some people think this is a cheesy movie. It hasn't really aged.
I love Forrest Gump.
It hasn't really aged well, I don't think.
I still love that movie.
But in terms of a cultural phenomenon, I don't think it's aged well. You know, like I think for 5 or 10 years, it was like the most beloved movie of all time. I think today, people, when they look back at it, they're kind of like, eh. But anyway, at the time when I watched it and the subsequent reviewings that I would see over the next 5 years or so, there are a number of moments where I cry.
Oh yeah.
But the one that makes me 3.5 is when he goes to, it's the very end of the movie, ends up at Jenny's apartment, and she's like, he meets her son, and she says his name is Forrest, and Forrest,
it's like me.
Forrest Gump says, oh, that's like me. And Forrest is just kind of looking at the boy, just quietly loving the boy from afar, or admiring the boy, you know.
Right.
And Jenny says, well, you know, he's named after his father. And Forrest Gump's like, oh, his father's named Forrest too? You know,
that's so weird.
And of course, us, the viewer, are just like, Forrest, it's you.
You can't see the forest.
And so the first sadness is like Jenny's been treating him like crap this entire time, and he hasn't been a part of his own son's life.
Right.
So you feel bad. And then the feeling of a person like Forrest suddenly realizing that he's a father, and then he says, he like realizes, wait, like I'm the father? And then he's like, he looks at Jenny, he's like, is he, and I don't know the full line, but I think it's like understood that he's based like, is he like me? Is he, does he have an IQ of 70, you know? And the confluence of everything in that moment, just the sadness and the oppression that he has experienced, you finally realize that he's been hurt by the comments and the bullying.
In his low intellectual prowess, he can still understand pain
and he wouldn't wish that on his own son. Like that's his first thought is, I hope that he's not like me. And as if he's a bad person, you know, as if Forrest isn't one of the, the character, one of the best
people in the
one history. Of the, regardless of IQ. And because of our stupid society, his first thought is, I hope he's not like me.
Right.
Oh, it just gets me. Number 6, Rogue One. We talked about that. Right? Number 5, Grave of the Fireflies, which you haven't seen.
Yeah, but you've talked about it.
It's about World War II anime. It's sort of like a Studio Ghibli movie. Is it Studio Ghibli or Ghibli? I've heard both.
I've always said Ghibli, but
maybe it's Ghibli. It's sort of like that, and it's about this boy and his younger sister who are in Tokyo during the war as the bombings are happening, and they're falling slower and slower into poverty and into starvation. And the Fireflies are the firebombing of Tokyo, and there's anyway, and it's a beautiful movie, and although it's terribly depressing, it's actually entertaining in a way.
So I feel like, didn't I try to watch this with you one time, or you were so there was a place where it was playing, but it was really late at night, and I was falling asleep.
Could be
like it was one of those like house parties or something. We're like, oh, we gotta watch this, but then I was like, so I missed it. I didn't watch. I
mean, I wouldn't put it past me to like try to get someone to watch this movie late at night, but I also would like to think that I would realize that's not the sort of movie you watch at 3
But we might have not been. Yeah, who knows?
Yeah. Number 7 is Moonrise Kingdom. Really, all Wes Anderson movies get me, but this one is my favorite. And there are so many moments. I mean, when Sam and what's the girl's name? Is it April or something? They're on the beach and they're just hanging out, similar to Boyhood, where it strikes a chord where like, oh, I remember what it was like to be to be 12 or 11 years old, and and then and then there's a whole series of events that happen at the end where it makes me cry. The sacrifice that they, when people sacrifice for other people, it makes me cry.
Yeah.
Number 3, Toy Story 3. I forgot that was on my list too.
Oh, by the way, there is something, because with Wes Anderson movies, so you know how you were saying that there's something you recognize?
Yeah.
For me, it's almost the opposite effect. What makes it so fascinating for me is that a lot of the things he shows me, I know from pictures in a magazine or from distant ideas, but they seem always very foreign and remote to me. Like a wealthy family or someone who goes hunting and that to me is so fascinating.
To me, it's this New England elite trappings, right. But that's not what I'm saying I recognize.
No, you recognize moments of interaction.
We saw Darjeeling Limited, and there's this one scene, the 3 brothers are fighting the whole time.
Right.
And they're at each other's throats. They're jealous of each other. They're bickering. And then someone like screws with one of their cars, like a mechanic. I can't remember what happens, but someone starts to screw with one of the brothers. And for the very first time, the other brothers come to their side, and in this really cartoony way, but a way that just gets under my skin, it's a depiction of brotherly loyalty, right, regardless of bickering, right, and of sacrifice and of family, yep, of we are family. It doesn't matter.
Ohana means family.
Yeah, and other movies will depict that in a more realistic way.
Right. And
I might cry then. But the way that Wes Anderson does it, it's obviously cartoonish, but it somehow makes it more of a... It's almost like...
It's still true.
But it's almost like when you have cartoons, like Inside Out.
Yeah.
It's so far from reality because it doesn't right, look any... Especially when you think about little things in your brain. But I think somehow when you do that, it opens the curtains wider into my brain.
Yeah.
Because I'm already thinking, well, this isn't really real, or it's symbolic. I'm not struggling with, is this real or not? It's just a straight line to my soul.
Right, right.
So Moonrise Kingdom, there's a number of moments, particularly then. Toy Story 3, we've already talked about. Inside Out, we've already talked about. Number 1, Mulan.
Mulan.
So the reason why I bring this up is because, one, I love this movie, and I think it's, a billion times better than the live action. It's one of the best Disney movies that's ever been made, in my opinion. I
remember when Mulan came out. Now, in all fairness, it came out right around the same time as Princess Mononoke came out. Not, the Americanized.
Yeah.
When I went to see Mulan, it was like where I realized, Disney's coming back. Yeah. Because Disney, to me, I had lost interest.
Yeah.
And then I saw it. I was like, whoa, that was solid.
Yeah.
Now I didn't have the same, which you'll talk about, but I didn't have the same maybe cultural connections. But I thought that was like Disney coming back in full force.
Yeah. So this is about China and China a while ago, hundreds of years ago. And I'm Japanese American. So not only am I not a Japanese national, I mean, my great grandparents were born in Japan, so right, I'm pretty far removed from that. But given that I never see any East Asian art in America, especially back then, or I rarely see it, particularly back then, seeing a Disney movie, straight down the middle, blockbuster, made for the masses movie with all the Disney trappings, with people with slanty eyes, people with my skin tone, people with, because even though China is so different from Japan, they're enough alike that when I see certain aspects of Chinese culture being depicted, I'm like, I feel something in me that's like, that's getting me somewhere. And for you white people out there in the United States, you are personally probably serving, you're getting served all the time. So you don't know what this is. You don't know what this feels like. Since you were 0 and you were watching, PBS, you've had stuff served up to you on your cultural platter your whole life. Imagine never having anything. Right. And then you're 26 years old or however old I was when I saw this movie, and I'm sitting in a theater, and so that made me cry. Like, you know, the ancestors and the dragon spirit and the father's honor.
Which, by the way, I think part of Coco was a ridiculous success and hit in Mexico.
You're right.
And there's a Colombian movie coming out.
Oh, yeah.
Not Colombian Disney.
Right, right. So maybe you'll have to alter your top 13. Yeah. It's also a great movie, and I cried during the tear jerking moments at the end. But I cried, no joke, 2/3 of this movie. Mulan would just do something cool. You know, like she finally figures out how to climb the pole.
And you're crying.
I'm not just crying. I'm a full on 4.
Right.
And I remember thinking, like, why am I crying this entire movie? So that's why it definitely goes on to number 1, because one, it was the most crying I might have ever done in any movie, and it was also special to me because, you know, I've talked about this before. When I was in the 5th, 6th grade, I, you know, was still crying occasionally, the way kids will when they get afraid or their feelings are hurt. And I wanted to be a man. I wanted to be a good, proper boy. And so I went on this campaign to stop crying. And so I transferred all of my tears into anger. And no one ever told me to do that. I just came up with that myself. And so whenever I had an urge to cry, I would actually clench my fists and get angry. And I managed to stop from crying.
Because you were trying to make a man out of you.
Right. And so for years, I didn't cry. I stopped crying. And I remember when I was in my early 20s, mid 20s, particularly when I started to become a therapist, I thought, is there something broken in me? Because I can't cry. And so I went on a campaign to start to re-cry again. And I would, when I thought, I bet you this is one of those times when I should be crying. And I would actually try to physically push tears out of my eyes. And it slowly but surely over time, I started to cry. And then when I saw Mulan, this is when the dam had fully broke.
I had the similar experience to you for different reasons and different timings, but we've talked about this. My dad literally scared me into not crying. And I didn't cry. I wouldn't cry. I wouldn't cry for anything. I got hurt super bad so many times, didn't cry. Because I was a man, you know. And then I think it was movies, I'm sure. No, you know what, actually? There was another thing that happened. Because I didn't go to concerts growing up. And the first concert I went to was The Cure. But then when I started going to live music, I remember actually I would get tears in my eyes. Because of the overwhelming emotion of those moments. I think that's where I started being like, I think I need to cry a little bit, you know? And then movies, of course.
What concert do you think you would have been crying?
I have a feeling like Erasure might have been one of them, but definitely Depeche Mode. I remember because, you know, Depeche Mode was my Beatles, you know, if that makes any sense. Depeche Mode was the band that when I moved up here, I was able to connect with my best friends that I've kept since then, like Ron, over Depeche Mode. Because I didn't know bands. I didn't know who anyone was. I didn't know who sings what. I grew up on Top 40. And then I'm talking to Ron in the bus. We're in the back of the bus. And he's like, well, do you know this? Do you know? I'm like, I don't know. And then he's like, so you don't. And then he said Depeche Mode. And I knew that name. Because I knew the songs on the top 40 that were some of my favorite songs. I'm like, oh, I know that. And then we started bonding over that. And then he started showing me them. He had all the CDs, or he had several of the CDs.
How was that your Beatles, though?
It was my Beatles in that, you know, like when people discovered the Beatles, when the Beatles came out, they must have been like this band, it's my band, you know? Well, I wasn't alive when the Beatles came out, but I was alive when Depeche Mode was out. And so for me, that was the band I was obsessed with. And I wanted to make music like them. And so I went to their concert, and it was so emotional because it was like seeing the Beatles for me.
What year?
It would have been 90.
Was it Violator?
Yeah, it was the Violator. It was. Oh wait, had they already put out? They might have put out songs of whatever it was called.
Faith and Devotion.
Could have been. Which I liked some of the. I liked half the songs.
Is that I Feel?
Yeah, I didn't like that song.
Yeah.
But they did all the Violator stuff too, though.
Yeah.
I can't remember which
I
tour
saw
it
them.
was.
I saw them definitely Violator 1990.
So it wouldn't have been 1990 because my first concert was 91 and it was The Cure.
Okay.
It had to be Songs of Faith and Devotion.
And they didn't come to Seattle, so we actually had to go to Vancouver, Canada to see
I
them.
definitely saw them in Seattle. So that was later.
Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah, I didn't, pretty much from Songs of Faith and Devotion on, I stopped listening.
And same with me. It's just that they played a lot of their catalog and I was like, oh my God. So anyways, but what I'm saying is that I had a similar journey where I rediscovered that I could cry but then even years much later where I had full breakdowns over my mom and things like that, where I was like, oh my God, what is happening, you know? And it's because of that like internalization of like, you should not cry, you should not express your emotions, you should not feel.
Yeah, in this weird way, as you're feeling like not a man and you're not brave enough as a man,
right?
You can't cry like a man. And the more of a man I became, and the braver I became, and the more courage I had, and the more self-esteem I had, the more crying I did.
Yeah, definitely.
So we got through one top 13, and we have 13 other...
12 more.
12 more other top 13. I don't know if we'll do all of them, but maybe we'll...
Some of them are not going to be as...
Right. Yeah. Some of them aren't going to be that... So tune in next time when we continue reviewing our top 13 list from the 13th anniversary 13-hour live show. And everyone out there, please take care of yourself because...
you deserve it.